There is a proverb in Rajasthan to quiet those who speak too loudly in the hills. Jo cheeze hame dikaine deti, unga saman karna chahiye. Respect what remains unseen. The documented history of Bhangarh begins in the 17th century. Raja Madho Singh established this site as a seat of power, a city so dense it once contained over 9,000 individual homes within its walls. Even in ruin, the sheer mass of the royal palace signals the wealth that once defined this valley. It stands at the far edge of the township, looking out over the remains of a once prosperous kingdom. Lok Katha ke Anusar, according to local legend, this ground belonged to a sadhu, Baba Balu Nath. He allowed the king to build here on one condition, that no shadow from the fort should ever touch his place of meditation. Local lore also speaks of Princess Ratnavati, who famously outwitted a tantric's attempt to use a love potion against her. She crushed the bottle against a boulder, which then rolled over the sorcerer. With his final breath, he sentenced the entire city to a death from which no one would ever return. While historians point to the practicalities of war and drought to explain the city's end, locals see the crumbling stone as proof of that dying breath. The tension here isn't between two different stories, but between what we can record and what the villagers refuse to forget. A modern documentary crew arrives to map these ruins. Arav leads the production, followed by Sia, the researcher, Kabir, the equipment specialist, and Rohit, their primary cameraman. As they walk through the merchant stalls, the crew checks battery levels and lens focus. To them, the dust and the broken arches are simply a set, a physical location for a rational investigation. This map shows the defensive logic of the original city. 3 concentric rings of stone and 5 massive gates were engineered to ensure that no enemy could ever fight their way to the center. The crew's plan is to follow this ancient path, pushing past the temples and through the final gate to reach the royal palace at the very edge of the valley. Their local guide, Vikram, stands at the first gate. He watches the sun, noting how little light is left. He repeatedly tells the crew they must be outside the walls before the sky turns. He doesn't look at the cameras, he only looks at the shadows. The crew nods politely and continues to set up their tripods. While Vikram watches the horizon with a visible, practiced dread, the investigators are busy reviewing their scripts, laughing as they adjust their microphones for the evening shoot. As the golden hour begins, a second proverb warns of the Gehari Shanti, the deep silence, that takes hold when the birds stop singing. The architecture of the temples begins to change. As the light hits the Nagara-style carvings at a low angle, the intricate stone figures seem to shift, throwing long, sharp shadows across the floor. Kabir stops checking his phone. His sensors begin to spike with interference, and his screens flicker with a rhythmic static that he can't explain. Sia stands in the center of the courtyard, listening. She tries to attribute the sounds to the wind or shifting stone, but the rhythm of the footsteps in the corridor above her sounds too deliberate for a breeze. In the viewfinder of Arav's camera, something moves. At the end of a long, dark passage, a silhouette stands perfectly still. It is a woman in a faded ivory dress. She faces away from them, her back straight, with long black hair that falls nearly to her waist. The research papers in Sia's hand provide no context for what they are seeing. Their professional training hasn't prepared them for a figure that doesn't show up on their thermal sensors, yet refuses to move. The light fails. The steady, cinematic shots are gone, replaced by the shaky, desperate movement of handheld cameras. Rohit is the first to see it. While the others are looking at their feet, his lens catches a movement in the upper arches that shouldn't be there. The camera settles. The figure is now closer, seen in side profile. Her skin is an unnatural, desaturated pale against the dark sandstone. She is barefoot, and she does not breathe. Arav calls out to Rohit, but there is no answer. The secondary camera is lying on the ground, the lens cracked, and the corridor behind it is empty. The crew stops trying to record. Arav drops his backpack, and Sia leaves her documents behind. They scramble toward the exit, their only thought being the distance between them and the main gate. the moon provides the only light. The crew's flashlights cut through the dark, revealing only more ruins and more shadows. From this height, the ruins appear as a complex, jagged trap. The open spaces that were so easy to navigate in the sun are now a series of dead ends and narrow, suffocating corridors. Kabir falls behind. By the time Arav and Sia turn their lights back, he is gone. The group is now down to 3, and the only sound is the heavy breathing of the survivors. The woman in ivory is now standing directly in their path. Up close, her face is an old, pale mask. Her eyes are dark, bottomless, and completely fixed on them. The confidence of the filmmaker and the researcher is gone. Facing the entity, they are no longer investigators. They are just 2 more people running from a fear that the locals have known for generations. Arav and Sia reach the final gate. Vikram is just ahead of them, his silhouette clear against the open road leading away from the fort. But as they pass the threshold, Vikram stops. He stands at the exact line where the fort ends. Arav reaches back to grab his hand, but his fingers pass through a space that feels like cold stone. He realizes why Vikram was never afraid of the shadows. Vikram's warnings weren't coming from what he had read in books or heard from tourists. He was speaking from the memory of someone who had never actually left the city. At dawn, a final proverb is whispered by those who live in the shadow of the Aravalis. Kuch darvaze kabhi band nahi hote. Some doors never truly close. The ruins remain, and for those who ignore the warnings of the past, the fort will always have room for more.